Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight on the Feminine Force Field. Carolyn and I are here again, laughing in the background about going to sleep at night. You know, like when you're a little girl and you really fight sleep, we're still doing that. And we're just working out ways that we can stop and get to sleep a bit earlier. Hi, Carolyn. How are you going tonight?
Hi, Lisa. How are you doing? Hi, everyone. And actually, Lisa, I think it's a little bit like us with a sleepover. We're like two friends in a sleepover. We're chatting to each other. We're supposed to be going to sleep
Yeah.
and we're on our phones, you know.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm turning my
We
phone
still
off
do
now at
that, right? Because
nine o'clock, and that's it. And
I
then
know.
we're like, okay, 10 o'clock.
So we're sending each other messages at night, this amazing thing happened to me. And it's like, oh, I've just got to put down the phone.
It's a different time zones, you see. That's the problem.
Yeah. That's our excuse. That's our excuse.
That's
It's
our
a
excuse.
different
That's
time
it.
zone.
We're sticking to it.
So tonight we're going to talk about self-belief, and Carolyn has a really amazing story to share with us about how she applied self-belief, but also to help us really build our self-belief, because in a chaotic world, having
Mm.
self-belief is like your unshakable core. So it's just such an important characteristic or feeling even that you have in your body when you have self-belief that can get you through anything. So well worth building that. So Carolyn, I'd love to hear your story again. I'm sure our viewers will love to listen as well.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, I know it's funny, isn't it? I was just thinking to myself recently. I was listening to the news and what's happening in the world. Saying, "Wow, there's so much happening, so much happening around us that is out of our control. And what can we do to, you know, to live in these times that we're in? And I was thinking about, how resilient we need to be and the inner strength that we need to have, and to really get to know ourselves in our core. And I was thinking of like how do you build that? And I thought to myself, like, when was the time that you had, you displayed a lot of self-belief. And because I suppose my parents had passed away, and I've gone down, like, I'm doing a lot of writing about like my past and how I grew up and everything. And I'm really kind of valuing the way I was raised. I was raised in a small village in under the Blackstones Mountains in County Wexford in Ireland. And I lived there until I was 16, then I moved away. But I was raised in a very tight knit, rural community. And, my mum was very about, the looks that pretty me up as a little girl, and all of fancy dresses and having the hair nice and everything like that. And that's probably why mum was presented well, because she trained me that way. And then, but my dad was all about inner strength. I was the only girl, and I was raised alongside my dad, under his wing, and with my two brothers. But he kind of, myself and him were very close, and he was a very strong man. He had so much to offer, and he kind of was building me kind of leadership skills. When I look back now, all my life, he was teaching me poetry, and he's teaching me everything about politics and about sport and about how the world works, I guess, and giving me like an interest in literature and poetry and Latin and everything. I think he was pouring everything he could possibly pour into me. And while he was going around doing his DIY and his painting and everything like that around the house, I'd always help him, and he'd be pouring this into me. I didn't really understand half of what he was saying to me. But I look back now, I think, wow, I think that inner strength and that self-belief he kind of built within me. And it kind of pushed me out. And as a character type for myself, I realized when I was small, I was very shy. I was a really, really shy child. I was always listening, these big eyes, like watching it, everything, but didn't say much. I didn't really have my voice, but just watching all the time. But I also had this huge drive in me, like it was like a fire in my chest. I could feel like from when I was really small that I just had to kind of push myself out into the world. I wasn't going to be happy in the little village where I grew up. I had to kind of go out and, I had this big mission, big thing I needed to do. And I remember telling my mom, like, "That's a really big thing to do. You don't understand, I don't know what it is, but I just have to do it." And so it kind of propelled me out into the world. I didn't really know what it was, but I just knew I had to do a whole lot of things really quickly to get to some place that I had to be at a certain time. So my dad's kind of self-belief kind of helped me push myself through that. And I did have to get to know myself from an early age to try and push myself forward, because I said, you're very shy, but yet you want to do so much. So what are you going to do? So I kind of created this like coach and cheerleader within myself. So I had this like rah rah cheerleader. I was always like, "Go on, Caroline, you can do it." And then that would work sometimes, but other times I'd need like the tough coach say, okay, Karen, you messed up here now. You have to start again. Okay, do your bit of crying, but get on with it, and the tough love side of things, like to push myself forward. So that, helped me throughout life. And I got to a stage when I was in my mid-20s that I was the only senior designer, female designer in an all male team of designers in the top agency in Ireland. And they were all like in their mid-30s, we'll say, or early 30s. And one day we went out on I wasn't long working there, and I always had to, sit in these big power meetings with them, come up with all these ideas. And, it was challenging because I was shy and I found it hard to find my voice and to get, because they had very big personalities and they were hugely talented and hugely intelligent, hugely educated, and they came from, privilege and all the things that I didn't have. So, but I, trying to navigate that, but, I got my work out there, and, I managed well, and, I did very well. And one day we were told we were going on this team building trip, and we had to go clay pigeon shooting, so it was really trying to build a team together and trying to kind of, I suppose, build that drive in us to, I suppose, be able to find that resilience when we're working in this really tough environment, in the corporate world, and being very creative, but always, using our logic as well. So we had to be very dynamic in the workplace. So anyway, we got there, and I realized that, I was standing there with the 6 men in front of me, and it was a clay pigeon shooting competition. So I was up against the guys, It's like, so what am I going to do, So I remember thinking to myself, looking at them, well, they're like stronger than me. They're probably more intelligent. They've more privilege. They've more of everything than I have. But the only thing I have is the only card I could play was my confidence. I could have more confidence and self-belief than they had, because that was in my control. That was the only thing I had that was in my control. Everything else was external. They were bigger, stronger, maybe faster, whatever.
Hairier.
But hairier. But I had, the only thing I could do in that second was, muster my self-belief, my confidence. So I said, what'll I do? And I thought, first thing I'll do is I'll go first. So I just said, I'll go first. So I went up, and I didn't really know. I never done it before. Had no clue how to even hold a shotgun. But luckily I was kind of really fit back then. And, the guy, I just said to myself, okay, I need to get really still here. And we'd always talk about stillness and concentration and focus. So that was when that came into play, where the self-belief, the stillness, and the focus. So basically he put the shotgun on my shoulder, and he told me how to hold it and aim it, and I thought to myself, well, I'm used to doing this. This is what I do. I hit the target, I'm in communications, and my thing is to hit the target. I have to get what I'm trying to communicate, my message, to the audience, and hit the bullseye every time. That's my job. So I'm used to doing that. So as long as I aim correctly and I focus my attention and my willpower and silence everything else, and not listen to the heckling and laughing and everything in the background, and go into that zone, give it my best shot, and believe in myself, then, that's all I can do. So he just said, okay, he told me, what you do is when you say pull, I'll launch the clay out, and the second that you see the clay start to drop from the sky, you pull the trigger. So it was very much about listening to him, watching, and then the minute that really, really focused concentration, for the second I saw the clay drop, to pull the trigger. So I did it, and it just smithereens into the middle of the sky. And then he kept saying pull, and he happened again and again and again and again and again. I got every single one of them up to 6, which we were supposed to do. And then he said, listen, I'm going to keep going. And he just kept pulling, 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 and every single one of them I got. And I couldn't actually believe it
Wow.
myself, but I didn't even understand what was really happening because I was so in the zone, you know? So I turned around and I looked at the guys and they were like, it was so funny because some of them were like, just jaw dropped. The others were like, whoa! Others were like, oh shit, I'm next. You know, how am I gonna she's like 25-year-old girl, and I'm like up against that. I don't know, shit, you know, what am I gonna do? And I just said, they were like, well done, wow, you know, where did you get that from? I just went like, thanks. And off I went, you know? And it was so funny because not one of them could get to it. I'd say the best anyone got in was like 4, maybe, you know. So we
Yeah.
had it was so funny because then later on I phoned my mom later on to tell her about what happened, and she says she didn't make anything of it. You know, she said, "Oh yeah, sure. Did not know that your your dad's dad, was a champion clay pigeon shooter in the Irish Army before he was postman."
Wow. So
And
it's
I
in the
was
genes.
yeah, so I was saying to myself, you know, really like the moral of the story is just to step up, you know, give it your best shot, have confidence, and you don't know what's inside you, you know, what's
Mm.
going to come out.
I love that. I'd really love to just pull out what you said there though, because it gave me a feeling, because there's been times in my life where I've been put into a situation where I have to perform. And what happens to me is, in the past, I would just give up. Like I would just like, oh, I can't do this. What if I fail? Like, and I can remember as a kid actually feeling this sense of self-doubt and not stepping up. But when I heard you say that, I had the memory of doing that. But I could see it would have been just as easy for me if I'd been given any guidance
Mm,
to, or if I'd been giving any education to actually muster this, this is all I've got. This is actually the one thing I've got that's going to help me in this situation. It's not my skill, it's how much I believe in myself, because you can really generate that in yourself. You can
yeah.
generate that. And if you believe that that is the one thing that you've got that's going to get you to where you want to go, it almost like it has so much leverage, and I can that like when you said that, I'm like, wow, like I'd never, ever, ever thought of using self-belief like that. It's
Yeah,
really, really
and it
good.
also, you mean you have to let go of the outcome, you know,
Mm,
like not be attached to the outcome. Because if you're attached to the outcome, you're not in that stillness, you're not in that quietness, you're not in that zone. You have to get into the zone where you're just like, you're not in it, even you're just completely and utterly still and
mm,
focused. And you have to see and hear, you know, your senses have to be acutely aware so you can make that right decision and you drown everything out. And I was thinking of how did I actually get to that skill? And I was thinking, you know, I think of all the really fancy workshops and everything that people can do nowadays. How that was trained in me was like I lived in a really loud household, you know, like everyone was really loud and big personalities, and I was always trying to watch the TV. So I had to learn how
mm.
to zone everyone out and just listen in, like, you know, as a child, like zone and just actually like so that I couldn't even hear anyone. And even to this day, my kids go, "Mom, when I'm watching the TV, say, Mom, when they're talking to me, I don't hear them because I just have that ability to just like zone
Wow.
everything out." So you're not listening to the rhetoric of other people. You're not listening to your own mind telling you X, Y, and Z. You just silence everything and just do what you have to do, what you're there to do in that moment, you know, and
Mm,
then
mm,
let go of what, you know, you're just doing your best, showing
mm,
up
mm.
and doing your best in the moment is all we can do, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that, like when I feel into that, I can feel how generating that feeling of self-belief in my body, it's almost like if I just hold on to that, and I act from that place,
Mm,
the power that that gives me,
mm,
not power in an unhealthy way, but power in I'm empowered in this moment. So it's almost like another tool. Like for me, that's an
mm.
emotional tool, which I'd
Yeah,
never thought to
it's
sort of
also, I
use
think,
like that.
having the knowledge of people behind you that have your back. You know, that makes a huge difference, even if they're not with you physically, if they're not even
Mm,
around, you know? Like, even my dad now, he's not around, but I still know, like, that's there, it's even stronger, like everything that, your parents have passed on to you, all your friends, people that really care about you, that actually have your back, that really, in your core that they love you, that gives you great strength, inner strength, and you can kind of overcome huge obstacles with that. And I think to build that at this time, and these are the kind of skills that we need to really tap into during these times, because they're very turbulent times. But like, it's the human spirit, really, because it's the unseen part of us is where our skills need to be honed, to really be able to push through to create change, positive change in the world at the moment. Yeah.
Mm. And I think that I'd just like to add to that a little bit. If you feel that your parents were a little bit absent from
Mm.
your own life, one of the things that I've observed is if I imagine my ancestors,
Yes.
and for me, particularly my feminine ancestors, and I imagine how it feels to
Mm.
have them supporting me. So I actually resource myself with
Yes.
that feeling of being supported by my ancestors, and that's helped
Mm.
me to have that feeling, that sense of being supported and being,
Yeah.
have that someone's got my back. So
And they don't have to be your parents. Like, it's like anyone that's given you support during your life, because then I had a period of my life where like that support dropped off, and that's when the self-belief really kicked in, so I had to, like, from the age of 18, I didn't have that support that I had earlier on in my life. So it's like then a lot of strangers, like the kindness of strangers, kind of kicked in, where I suppose I wouldn't have survived only for the kindness of strangers around me as I traveled the world and I did different things, so it's like just mustering up that, like, belief in the human spirit, that the goodwill of people around you, and that the trust in it, so like that's a brilliant point, that like just mustering up,
mm,
like, the positive, relationships you've had over time, and the belief that that they're there to support you, and that you have support, of the belief that there is support there for you.
mm. No, that's fantastic. So juicy. That's great, Caroline. Thank you very much. And I love that story. That's a classic. Such a classic. Ooh.
I have to thank my granddad for that.
It's amazing. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed our conversation about the secret to self-belief. And thank you, Caroline, for sharing your story. And we look forward to seeing you guys next Monday night. We'll talk about emotional something. Not sure yet, but we'll let you know what it is.
Yeah, brilliant. Looking forward to that, Lisa. Thank you, everyone. I hope that helped and give you a little bit of inspiration to believe in yourselves. Okay, see you on Monday.
Thanks,
Take care.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.